class. I want to talk to you a little bit about this quiz that I gave you. And so these are the pages I want you to have in front of you. There's two different measurements we're collecting. The CAL, which is the clinical attachment level, and the attached tissue. So the first thing we're going to look at is this measurement here. I want to explain this sheet to you. The clinical attachment level or loss is known as the CAL. CAL is recession plus pocket depth. So what I want you to think about is the CAL is the clinical attachment level where the junctional epithelium is hugging the tooth. And the junctional epithelium is what our probe hits when we are taking a periodontal measurement. So around each tooth there are 6 readings we take with our probe, and that's also going to be where our clinical attachment is. So this probe is underneath this margin here, landing on the JE. That's the pocket depth, the junctional epithelium. When we take probe measurements for our tooth, we have 6 readings, right? So if this is our tooth, we have a mesial, we have a distal to that tooth, we have our line angles. So inside our EagleSoft, we take a measurement here. Let's say it was a 3. We take a measurement here. Let's say it's a 2, 3, and then we go on to the lingual. We have a 3, 2, 3. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 measurements per tooth of a probe depth, and there's also going to be 6 measurements of a clinical attachment level. So when we look at a tooth such as this canine here, this is the CEJ, and then this is the gingival margin. So we want to collect a recession, which is the CEJ to the gingival margin measurement first. So this tooth looks like it has about 6 millimeters of recession. So we would want to record recession and then record a probe depth and add the two together to tell us where the JE sits. Because ultimately the junctional epithelium is the distance from the CEJ to the JE. That's going to give us our CAL. So the distance from the CEJ to the JE is going to equal our CAL. So therefore recession, which is this measurement here, plus pocket depth, which is this measurement here, is going to give us our CAL. Okay, so let's look at this sheet here. Gingival margin is the same as the recession. So for tooth number 2 or tooth number 1, we have a gingival margin at the distal of 2, the direct buccal of 2, and the mesial of 2. And this is our probe depth. So if we look at our gingival margin recession area plus our pocket depth, that's going to tell us how much combined, where this sits in relationship to the CEJ, what the CAL is. So for tooth number 1, 2 plus 3 is 5, 2 plus 2 is 4, and 3 plus 2 is 5. That's going to be our attachment level, or our CAL. And this also equals recession. Let's move on to tooth number 2. So our attachment level is going to be 6, 5, 3. And for tooth number 3, it's going to be 7, 4, 6. For tooth number 4, there's not any recession, so the clinical attachment level is going to be the same as the probe depth, which is 5, 4, 4. So when you look at this question, what is the CAL for tooth number 2? Well, the CAL for tooth number 2 is 653. The CAL for tooth number 6, I didn't calculate that, would be 4, 2, 3. And then the cal for tooth number 15 would be 8, 5, 9. When we look over here to these questions, we're going to add the probing depth plus the recession. The gingival margin was at -2 millimeters, so we're going to add those two. 5 plus 2 is 7. For this question here is asking about attached gingiva, so we're going to skip that. This question here is giving us a little bit opposite. We had a clinical attachment level of 8 and a pocket measurement of 6. So if I draw that tooth out, let's say it was another canine, my clinical attachment level was 8 millimeters, and my probe depth was only 6 millimeters. So that tells me there was some recession on this tooth here's my actual clinical attachment level, but this measurement here was 6. So that tells me I had 2 millimeters of recession. So that's how I'm going to answer that. And yes, the CEJ is visible because I had some recession present. If I didn't have any recession and I had a pocket depth of 3 millimeters, my cal is going to be 3. And if I had a clinical attachment level of 4, let's draw that over here. So my cal was 4 millimeters. I'm going to guess that was 4 millimeters from the CEJ, but my pocket depth was 6 millimeters. My gingival margin was probably up here. If this is only 4, I have to have, and I had a probe depth of 6, I have to have 2 other millimeters somewhere. So I know that my gingival margin was at a plus. So there's not actually recession. The gingival margin was above where it should be at a +2. That's how we determine clinical attachment level, which is where the JE sits and snugs the tooth. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is attached gingiva. Attached gingiva is when if you look at yourself in the mirror and you pull that lower lip down, you're going to have alveolar mucosa here. You're going to have attached gingiva here, and then this is the mucogingival line, or the mucogingival junction. So what makes this very significant is this attached gingiva is help keeping that buccal plate of bone intact. It's very important that the patient have a healthy width of attached gingiva. And the way we determine how much attached gingiva they have is to first take a probe reading from the gingival margin to the mucogingival junction. So let's say this was 5 millimeters. The mucogingival is 5 millimeters on that tooth. And the next thing we want to do is put the probe inside the tissue and take a probe depth measurement. So the sulcus is 3 millimeters here. So this, if this was the width of the measurement that we got for the mucogingival junction, we have to subtract the pocket depth because this area right here is what is attached. It's where our probe was landing when we put it in the sulcus. So in order to get the area of attached gingiva, we would take the 5 millimeters of mucogingival minus the probe depth of 3 millimeters, and that's going to give us 2 millimeters of attached gingiva. 2 millimeters or greater is good. As long as we have that, we're in good shape. We call an area that has 0 to 1 millimeters of attached gingiva mucogingival involvement. That means they need to go to the periodontist and have a graft done. So for tooth number 5, how much attached tissue does it have? Well, attached tissue is the mucogingival minus the pocket depth. That's going to give us attached tissue. So when we look over here, when we look at tooth number 5, here is the mucogingival. I've made some alterations to mine. We only need a center number. We don't need numbers all the way across because we're only measuring that direct center to get the line. So I'm going to take my mucogingival minus my pocket depth, and that's going to give me a 4. So there's 4 millimeters on tooth number 5. So that's healthy and nothing needs to be done. Tooth number 7, my mucogingival line is 5 and my pocket depth was 4. 5 minus 4 is 1. That's a 1 millimeter. That is got mucogingival involvement. It's mucogingivally involved. Tooth number 14 has a 7 millimeter pocket minus the 5 millimeter periodontal, or 7 millimeter mucogingival line minus the 5 millimeter pocket. It's going to give us a 2. So that tooth is okay too. So if we go back over to this sheet here, mucogingival, remember, mucogingival minus probe depth, pocket depth is going to give us the attached gingiva. So if we have a mucogingival line of 8 and a probe depth of 5, 8 minus 5 is going to be 3 millimeters. Is there mucogingival involvement? No. How much attached gingiva for this question? Mucogingival is 8, probe depth is 6, 2 millimeters. There's not any. No. Okay, attached gingiva, 4 millimeters minus 3 millimeters. There's only 1 millimeter of attached gingiva, and yes, it's going to be the answer for that. And then 8 millimeters minus 6 millimeters is 2 millimeters, and no, there is not. So we could go back to this and identify all the areas that have mucogingival involvement by subtracting the probe depth from the mucogingival line. So 2 minus 2 is 0. There's 0 attached tissue on tooth number 1, so that would be one of your teeth that's listed. And you could do the same for all of these. I hope this helps. Have a great weekend.